Ah, welcome to Babbling Zoom, where the narrative matters. Uh, I think a day or two ago, Ubisoft dropped the trailer for Assassin's Creed Shadows, which we've been hearing for the last few years about being in Japan, and eventually we heard about the fact that they're introducing Yasuke, the Black Samurai. Um, a controversial figure, one I was so happy with. I was elated. Um, so once I figured out that there were two characters, I thought, "Ooh, awesome! This is going to be great." And then I kind of watched the trailer, and I'm kind of slightly disappointed. Not because of Yasuke, well, mostly because of Yasuke, but not in the way you think. Most people right now are freaking out over the fact that, oh no, there's a black samurai. There's no such thing as a black samurai. Blah 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 blah. We'll get to that later. My problem is a game that's so obsessed with historical events um took a character that had a really good story and essentially did kind of like a buddy thing with the female character. This is not a slight against female characters or black characters or anything. This is because this is one of those things where it seems like the story is going to be about a samurai who goes against his master, which isn't said anywhere in any type of historical event, right? It's never even implied, so it just kind of makes no sense. Um, so the part that gets me is like this is a perfect duo, not buddy cop thing, not buddy thing. It's just a perfect duo that centers around a bigger historical narrative, right? Which is why I was really pumped when I found out about these two characters. I was like, oh my goodness, we're gonna go and talk about that whole year, right? Like going through this website, they bring up Japan with a cycle of weather, which is like, oh my gosh, we're probably gonna be like the whole year of like um 1581 to probably 1582 ish, right? That's gonna be amazing. We're gonna go through this whole cycle. Um, Again, going through this trailer was just going through the site. It's just like, oh, cool. You get to be the ninja running around. Anyone who's it's gonna be hard to fight. It's hard to beat. I think it was Tenchu Stealth Assassin. Great game. Assassin's Creed is great and all, but I mean that was kind of at the time the definitive like Shinobi storyline with really good stealth mechanics. Um, and then realizing, oh, cool, and you could be a samurai fighting everything. This is great. My brain was flaring every single minute, and I was like, "This is cool. This is so cool." All right. So, and yeah, so I saw, oh, cool, you could play as these two characters, and my brain said, "Wow!" Especially when I figured out that she's part of the Iga province. This is, and I had to run and look it up to make sure I was right about what's about to happen. So cool. So, like I said, went through all this, saw the trailer, I mind it, and then if you skip by all this, I was like, oh, cool. We're about to see, uh, yeah, why can't you pause? We're about to see this whole situation. So, what is this? Okay, so this is where my brain was flaring because, oh my goodness, we're about to hit um one of the most notable characters in history, Nobunaga, right? Um, I think it's said that he's one of the three major lords that reshaped Japan into the Edo period, right? At the end, near the end of the Sengoku period, which is the Warring States, he was like the top dog. He was the crazy fool that didn't follow any conventions um, and just kind of dominated everything. but his life ended in this betrayal at, I think it was, I'm going to butcher names, by the way. Um, Honno-ju, at a Honno-ju temple, right? Where he got betrayed by one of his generals. Or, yeah, by his retainer. There we go. He was betrayed by one of the retainers. This started the cycle of one person becoming emperor, or one person becoming shogun, which then dropped to another person being shogun, which was related to Nobunaga, which then resulted in someone, the final guy, um, um, Ieyasu, right? Or starting the Edo period. But so why do they geek out? Let's go to this moment right here, right? One of your characters is named Naoi, right? She's probably a ninja from the Iga province. And at a specific point, um, prior to this, Nobunaga's son tried to take over the region, tried to destroy the region by attacking all the villagers and ninjas there. Failed. Nobunaga came back. Again, I said 1581, and basically took like 10 times the amount of like soldiers to just dwarf the village and just destroy everything, right? This is why there's a symbol right there, Nobunaga's crest on this um, on this soldier. This is the moment that Nobunaga came in with his forces and just decimated the area, right? The story they're presenting is she's one of the last few. She is the ninja of the story. She is your what was it? She is your Order of Assassin for the Assassin's Creed storyline. Perfect. That is a perfect idea. Perfect. Right? And then my problem starts. Let's see, it's around here. Where at this moment you're introduced to Yasuke. Right? Now, this shot right here envisions everything that I thought this whole game was going to be centered around. These two add-ons, right? Why do I say these two add-ons? Because we have to understand Yasuke, a person that's unknown, right? We have Oda again. Yasuke is a figure that's barely mentioned. There's a few handful of actual like reported reports of Yasuke in history, right? Which gives a good understanding of like piecing together this man's life. Why is that? Because it's rare for any Black figure in history to be represented, to be written, to be recorded. I mean, this is the same time that the slave trade is going on, right? This is the 16th century. The slave trade's going on. Everyone's marketing in slaves. So a common thing that everyone says is Yasuke was a slave at the time. But we have to remember that our notion of slavery, or the rules around slavery, and I only mean the slave trade rules, differ depending on where you're from, right? Slavery is bad all over the place. But a common notion in America, where I'm living, is that what happened in slavery in America is the exact same thing that happened all around the world. The difference is, and people who try to defend what happened in America say that we only had like a small percent of slaves compared to the rest of the world, which is true when you think about how slavery outside of America worked. It was you were a slave, you died a slave in horrible, horrible conditions, but if you were able to survive enough, you were able to get your freedom. Your children, most of the time, weren't part of the deal. There are ways of gaining freedom, right? That was a thing. In the colonized world, that was a thing. But slavery has been going on for a while now. There are stories of slaves that started off as a slave and became, I think there's one story about someone who started off as a slave and became a king, right? Slaves weren't just menial labor. Slaves were kidnapped. It's very real. They were kidnapped and trained as servants or trained as warriors in the East, right? And it appears that this is kind of the general lineage that Yasuke went through. He went through child, kidnapped, slave, turned soldier, probably gained his freedom, and kept working with either kept working with Jesuits or joined up with the Jesuits. By the time he's introduced, he is introduced into the story or into history as a bodyguard, not just a regular bodyguard, but a bodyguard to the Italian Jesuit priest, Vlanio. I believe I'm saying it right for the first time, Vlanio, right? Vlanio's whole story is the fact that he came to Japan to fix the problems that happened that his priests are having in Japan. So he shows up with Yasuke, right? To see what's going on, and it just so happens that these two meet. Vlanio goes to meet with Nobunaga. This is the most famous, famous for Japan, meeting of the two, right? Well, well known, not famous, well known. Let's put it that way. Now, we in America, or we all around the world, let's put it that way, or just learning about this whole idea of a black samurai most recently. I think there's a book that came out in 2019. I don't know where my copy is. um Black Samurai. There we go. Oh, that's not it. All right. So this book just came out in 2019, right? Which is in a way kind of the definitive book documenting as much as it can, along with a lot of narrative filler. But the great thing about this book is in the end, this kind of brings up a lot about historical facts, and so it's kind of like the History Channel in book form. If anyone, that's the best way of me explaining this book. Great book. For us, this was our first introduction to Yasuke, right? But to Japan, this wasn't the first introduction. This is a character who's been there for a while now, you know. Let's see. There was a children's book that was created back in the 60s, basically chronicling the story of Yasuke's adventures with Nobunaga, right? Switcher. And this won an award. Yeah. This was a 60s book that won an award, right? They've always known. There was always talk and stories about him. So here's a children's book about it. Um, there was an old TV show. Wow. There's an old TV show of the 90s that this was a hard picture to find because this show's not showing anymore. This show's not on anymore. Um, so even in this show, it depicts Yasuke in one of the episodes with Melania and the priest helping to interpret it, right? This is the famous meeting that they had, right? So this is a character that's been there for a while now, since the 60s in media form. He's always been there. So for us to complain about he's not there is like us arguing Japan's history. That's kind of silly. So that's it. So back to the Yasuke thing. So why is Yasuke's perfect? Why is this perfect? Right? Uh yeah, so why is this whole thing perfect? What could have been a perfect story? What so let's talk about the perfect story that could have been, not the nonsense that I got from this trailer. Right? So this story. This is a story that could have been kind of like, is it Grand Theft Auto 5? Where you play three different characters and you're bouncing around? Just like that. It's a story of um Naoe, uh, an order of assassin uh ninja or shinobi that lost everything because Oda attacked and wiped out everything, right? At the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing the story of Yasuke's introduction, right? Again, because the Jesuits are basically preaching Christianity, this is the introduction of how the Knights Templar, the Knights Templar is part of this storyline, right? In other words, Yasuke is a hand of the Templars, right? He's a bodyguard already. So he's probably already knows, he's probably not that deep into it, but he's just kind of on the like understanding the general idea of logistics of what they want. And essentially, this is a meeting probably trying to push the Knights with Templars agenda. Or or it could be one of those situations where Yasuke, this exchange via the Assassin's Creed lore could have been Vlanyo's idea of, well, if he wants him, maybe we could have an inside man understanding what's going on, right? And also looking for some piece of something that we need. So you're now introduced to a story where you get to play two roles: the Order of Assassin, the Order of Assassin, and the Knights Templar. You get to play both. You bounce back and forth between different storylines. And why are we doing this? Because we want to know a great story revolving around Nobunaga. Through Yasuke's eyes, we get to see the kind man, the man who's thinking forward, the man who sees the future that he wants to build, right? We're seeing the gestures of the kindness of Nobunaga, the unorthodox ways of thinking of Nobunaga, right? But through Naoe, and I'm going to always mess her name up. I'm sorry. But through her eyes, we could see the demon that is no, right? This is a perfect situation of seeing the man, the fool, through one eyes, the demon, the tactician, through the other. So, how does it start? Where does it end? Surprisingly, it's all in the historical notes. It's perfect, right? So one of the things that I need a picture for Yasuke. I need a better picture for Yasuke. Let me. Oh wait, you know what I should do? Let's go here. All right. What could be a good story for Yasuke? Or let's break down what could have been. All right. What could have been, or how the story would start. Um, it could be a story where it starts off like this. There's an event with prior to that meeting. Uh, yeah, prior to this meeting. Uh, there's a report saying something about how like there was a at this big festival, they got all people got trampled trying to look at this tall, 6'2" black man walking around with the massive procession that is the Christian church, right? Or the Jesuit church. Well, Christian, it works. And people were so intrigued that it started the stampede and started trampling people. So, how do you start the game? Tutorial number one. Um, Yasuke needs to basically escape the massive crowds of people without hurting anyone. So now you have your jumping puzzles done. Learn how to climb, learn how to dodge, learn how to hide. It's probably not going to be able to hide because you're too tall, but learn how to move and traverse the world and get to, or maybe even protect, because again, you're a bodyguard. Traverse and protect all the way to the castle. Tutorial number one done. Introduce Yasuke as the bodyguard, recreating this main interaction, not the Netflix nonsense where he's a slave, which pissed me off. Recreate this situation again from the 90s, right? Recreate this situation, even down to the fact that they have to soap him up to make sure that his black can't come off. A thing. Um, and now you're introduced. You are also introduced to maybe his sword, maybe a weapon case. You get to see Nobunaga's massive stash of things, and you probably have to, later. Tutorial one, that. Um, with Naoe's introduction, I mean, we already showed it in the trailer, right? Her tutorial is being the assassin, dodging, leaping, attacking, doing whatever you can. These are the two sides of the story you're going to be focusing on. One, or always traversal, but through assassinations, and one bouncing around, leaping, and trying to hide your big figure. Um, that's it. This is your tutorial. Done. Right? Or this is what could have been. As you go through, you bounce back and forth through the story. Naoe's whole thing is street level, walking around, picking up clues, trying to figure out what's going to happen. Um, yeah, trying to figure out how she could possibly get to the point where she can assassinate Nobunaga, right? And through her eyes, she's slowly picking apart the pieces, trying to get to the people who are disheartened by Nobunaga's movements. Again, we get to see what the one side thinks Nobunaga is, right? Through Yasuke, on the other hand, um, actually, let me back out of this video. Oops. Just easier to go down here. All right. So her whole thing is just basically sneaking around, trying to assassinate, trying to get information, trying to throw some discord into the ranks. through Yasuke's movements, we learn more about the man and more about the history of Nobunaga and even the wider war of the Sengoku period, right? Simple as that. We get to learn, we get to meet notable figures in history. We get to learn and eventually confront the traitor and all these things. This could be the story. This could be a great story, right? So where does this lead? Like home bases, she could have her home base being the streets, walking around, um, hideouts, storerooms, all these things. This is her hub world. Yasuke's hub world, his house. He was given a house. He was given a stipend. He was given the title retainer, right? And I know everyone's like, retainers not samurai. Um, there's a bunch of people. I swear I saw it earlier. There's a bunch of people whose name who was given a title retainer and were samurai. So get over it. Um, but through him, we get to see the luxury, the story, the upper class that is the life of a samurai, the notable figures in history, um, and we get to see kind of like the view of how the upper class might look down on the lower class. He may waver here and there as an outsider, but I think that's the play that would be perfect. Allow Nobunaga to help him understand, and they share quips and they talk about like Yasuke could talk about the greater narrative that's going on, the greater history that's going on outside of that. You know, getting all of us to understand the historical part of the historical part of this time, right? So essentially, where does it end? Do they come back to? Do they come together and become friends? Honestly, no. They should not become friends. This should be a story literally about an assassin and a Templar knight. That's what it should stay with the entire way. With an ambiguous, I don't know who's right, right? So the final battle should be, where is it? The Honno-ji incident. The Honno-ji incident is the moment where, oh, I can't remember his name. Ikuji Mitsuhito Hito betrays Nobunaga and basically attacks the temple that Nobunaga is staying in. Full on assault, full on attack, right? Um, everyone inside battles their hardest to try and protect um, Nobunaga. Uh, there is the temple catches on fire, so there's a fiery fight happening inside as soldiers come in from the outside, full on battles inside. The end result was Nobunaga ended up um, committing seppuku and chopping his head off, and they couldn't find his head. The kids' book, the children's book, states that Yasuke was there. In the children's book, saying this, there's no historical record, but there's in the children's book, it adds the fact that Yasuke was there and ended up taking the head and ran away with it. Right. So what could this be? What could this be? This ending could truly be the perfect ending of these two fighting each other. You finally get to choose which side do you want to be on. Do you want to fight Inoue or do you want to fight Yasuke? Right? In the end, everything still ends the same, right? But you could finally say to yourself, who dies here? Because Yasuke's end story doesn't have an ending in historically. It's rumored that he went back to the Jesuits. It's rumored that he ran off and did something. Who knows? Right? But that's perfect. he doesn't have much of a history, so there's a lot of history to play with. But understand he was probably loyal to Nobunaga, right? So him turning on him is a stupid idea. Um, so at the end of the story, you can choose who lives, who dies. Choose the assassins or choose the Templars. And in the end, no matter what, you still watch the burning of the temple and Nobunaga's death. It could have been amazing. This could have been a great game. But after seeing the trailer and knowing what they're about to do with it, I'm kind of upset. This is probably a game I'm not going to buy. Maybe on a discount. I'll check it out. I'll see the reviews, see if it's worth it. Historically, I'm going to just sigh every minute. Um, so I don't know. It sucks because Yasuke is the third black character in an Assassin's Creed game that you can play. Uh, I think the other one was Adewale in Black Flag, and I don't remember her name on the one in Louisiana, but the PSP version was the other. Uh, I haven't played the PSP one, but I played Black Flag, and Black Flag's amazing. Uh, so I'm pleasantly surprised there's another character, but I'm kind of upset that in the end he's not faithful to historical depiction, right? So, oh well, we'll see what happens when it finally comes out. And with that, I'm done. We'll see. All right, see you.